It was a pleasantly warm spring morning, the sun shining with barely any clouds in the sky. I wasn't really used to this, back where I'm from. This would be the highlight of the summer, and for Japan, it was just a normal day. Waking up to see the weather this nice always put a smile on my face, but I had even more reason to smile, considering I'd just stepped foot into UA High School. It was even weirder for me, not just with the weather and the fact that I just barely made it into the school, but the fact was, back in my home country, I didn't go to school. Complications with quirks and other red tape that I don't need to get into right now. What was happening right now was I had gone inside the building on campus. I had been assigned to Class 1A. I was alongside 20 other students, which seemed a little weird considering it was an odd number. Classes usually had an even number of students. I walked up to the massive door and slid it open, walking inside. I wasn't the first there, and I certainly wasn't the last. There were 6 other students there. I recognised half of them. The gravity girl was there, who seemed to have a constant blush on her cheeks for some unknown reason. I also saw the shadow guy, his arms crossed as he sat at his desk alone. I didn't recognise the others. A tall man with 6 arms, white hair, and a mask to cover most of his face. A student who was invisible, apart from her floating school uniform. There was another tall boy who didn't seem to be speaking much, and had a humanoid face. And the last one I saw there was a pink girl who had fuzzy pink hair and 2 horns. She had black sclera and yellow ringed black pupils. She and the dark shadow guy seemed to be the most inhuman in the group, along with the tall silent one. I looked at them all, eager to get to learn about their quirks, and of course themselves. I was going to be with these students for 3 years and become pro alongside them. The school years are always the points in a hero's life they're asked most about, so I knew I had to make an impression and some friends. I breathed in as I scanned the room again to see who I should talk to first. I walked towards the invisible girl, as I thought it would be easier to talk to someone if I didn't have to look them in the eye. But instead of stopping in front of her, I quietly muttered a quick, "Hi," and continued towards my seat and sat down. I did it all in one breath, holding it until now, and I exhaled sharply as I regained my composure. Perhaps it would be easier when a few more students came in? That way I draw less attention to myself. I always did tend to overthink social situations. Even today I still have a little trouble, but I've learnt to put those troubles behind me. However, things started looking brighter for my social future when she came in. The girl from yesterday, Tsuyu Azui. She walked in, and, to my surprise, sat to the right of me. She was in my class after all, and she was assigned to sit right next to me. I tried desperately to think of something to say, my breath's getting shallower. Do I say hi? Do I continue yesterday's conversation? Do I ask her how she's feeling? I didn't have to torture myself too long, though, as she recognised me pretty fast and turned to face me and spoke. "Alex-Jan, you were accepted after all. I guess rescue points do exist then." Some of the pressure was alleviated from my mind, and my breathing normalised as I calmed down a bit. "It's nice to see you here too, Sue." "Chan, that's the right honorific, right?" I asked again, a little nervous. She put her finger on her chin and stared at me. "If you want to be friends, yes. You don't know what honorifics are? You're not from around here, are you?" I scratched the back of my head nervously and closed my eyes momentarily as I chuckled. "You guessed it. I've only been around here a year. I spent the first 14 years of my life in Ireland, but I always loved Japan and its culture and its language. After a few family circumstances changed, my dad and I came to live here." She listens intently and nods when I finish explaining. "Well, I'll teach you more about honorifics after class if you want. And, although I'm late, welcome to Japan." She closed her eyes and smiled, the tip of her tongue poking out the corner of her mouth, her head slightly tilted. My heart melted and a warmth came to my cheeks. Was I blushing? I'd never felt anything like it, and it wasn't an overwhelming sensation, so I assumed I must have been. I thanked her, and the last of the class poured in. I hadn't even noticed them come in. I was so engrossed with my conversation with Sue. There was one row of chairs at the back that had an extra chair to compensate for my being there. Maybe my score tied with another student, and that's why I was put in? The teacher didn't announce his presence in the conventional sense. He didn't come in through the door. Apparently, he'd been there the whole time, just on the floor, behind his desk, in a full-body camping bed. It was strange, to say the least, but I felt bad for him with how obviously exhausted he was to have committed to sleeping in his classroom. Something seemed familiar about him. It was only after Midoriya pointed it out that I understood why. This was the pro-hero Eraserhead, Shoto Aizawa. He could eliminate people's quirks just by staring at them, though I'm sure you already knew that. After a quick and unenthusiastic start to the class, he told everyone to come up to introduce themselves one by one. I felt a slight churn in my stomach, as I knew I'd have to get up in front of 20 other people and announce to them all who I am. No big deal, right? What if I misspelled my name in Japanese and made an idiot of myself? What if my voice randomly cracked? What if they just don't like me? They were all obviously talented individuals with amazing quirks and defining personalities. The male with the long blonde hair stood out a mile. I just took a few deep breaths and sat back so I get to know everyone. Speaking of the guy with the long hair, he was the first up. It seemed to be via seating arrangement. He revealed his name to be Yuga Aoyama, then spouted on some drivel about himself, which I quickly lost interest in. I hate idiotism. Then afterwards, the pink girl walked up and revealed her name to be Mina Ashido. She seemed quite friendly and very extroverted. I made a mental note to talk to her later, since she'd probably be easy to talk to. Then Sue was up. She didn't tell the class anything I didn't already know. Then it was me. I stood up and went to the front of the class and trembled slightly. I wrote my name in English on the board before writing it in Japanese beneath. My name is Arakusanda Hiru. However, I like to be known as Alex. As you can probably tell by my name and my accent, I'm not Japanese. I'm actually half Irish, half British, and moved from Ireland here last year. Almost everyone in the classroom went ooh at the prospect of having a foreigner in their class. If my Japanese is crude, please forgive me. I look forward to growing as a hero alongside you all. I quickly took my leave and scurried back to my seat and sighed as the rest of the students introduced themselves. After everyone was finished, Mr. Aizawa instructed us all to go outside to the school grounds. He gathered us around and explained we were to do a Quirk Apprehension test. This was to gauge our abilities in various aspects. I already knew I was going to do bad, considering I'd not visited the grounds earlier, so couldn't use my quirk. As soon as he told us what the first test was, I immediately started trying to think of ways to pass. By the way, he sleepily stated, last place gets expelled. Everyone shouts in unison, and I start to panic. Everyone here was stronger than me. Every single person. The first test was a race. Several people would obviously be able to beat me. However, I wasn't the slowest person. This was perhaps the only test that would favour me. Due to my quirk requiring me to have physically been to a place, I do a lot of walking, sometimes jogging. So I'm used to running and bursts of energy. My legs were probably the strongest part of me. It was a 50-metre sprint. I could run a little slower than 10 metres a second when I really tried, and my leg muscles were already loosened as it took me half an hour to walk to school. I did a few stretches, regardless, as I watched. Everyone did really well, though most of them were able to use their quirks to get ahead. It was my turn, and when it was time, I ran as fast as I could, completing the track in 5.24 seconds. I felt really proud of myself. I beat half the students there. That gave me a good head start against the others, who'd probably have a good chance to overtake me later. The next was grip strength. The tall student who'd said his name was Shoji and had 6 arms crushed the competition with a whopping 540 kilograms of grip force, half a ton. I knew this was where a lot of students would overtake me, as I was never known for having much upper body strength through most of my life. I gave it my all, yet only managed 49.86 kilograms, dead last. even less than Midoriya, who also couldn't use his quirk to help him. I was instantly brought down to 17th place. I started worrying about my position in the school. I thought it was a terrible thing to expel someone based off of their performance in tests like these, but who would I be to argue against a pro hero? The next test was a standing long jump. Long story short, good for me, considering it was a leg sport and relatively light. Ended up getting 10th place, bringing my total to 13th. The test after that were repeated side steps. Same applied for that test as the prior one, yet I got 15th place still, bringing me down to 17th again. Then came the ball throw. Uraraka, the gravity girl, Bakugo, the fiery head kid, and Midoriya performed outstandingly, yet I got dead last considering the lack of upper body strength I had, bringing me down to 20th, just above Midoriya. I didn't want to view any of them as rivals, but I had to beat him. I had to become a hero. By the end of the tests, I dreaded looking at the score. I looked up and saw 20th, one position above Midoriya. I breathed a sigh of relief, but we were all surprised by what Mr. Aizawa told us next. "You lied to us?" we all complained, our trust feeling a little betrayed. However, he did make a good point. We gave it our all and to make sure we didn't fail. And technically, I didn't. It's funny when I look back at the way our school lives started. We both scraped the bottom of the barrel, and now both Midoriya and I are the strongest heroes. After that whole ordeal was over and done with, we returned to our classes. Lunchtime came not long after that, which I was grateful for. I was starving after all that exercise. I was still getting used to ordering Japanese food. It was all so different from the food I used to have back at home. Sometimes I'd misread certain letters and end up ordering the wrong thing, or I'd pronounce something wrong by one syllable and people would look at me as if I had something wrong with me. This time around, I ordered food and got exactly what I was expecting and smiled to myself. Good thing I like rice. There were a lot of rice dishes to get used to. I ordered a Niratima donburi, which is basically just egg with garlic chives over rice. Simple, yet delicious. I took 2 portions as it's the only thing I felt like having at that moment, and I knew one wouldn't be enough to fill me. I took my tray and plate and sat down at a table that had no one else sitting there. It was a subconscious act to just automatically go and sit to eat alone. I had completely forgotten I was trying to socialise with my classmates and just drifted off. I was one of the first from my class to have gotten their meal though, so when others got their meals, they saw me and recognised me from the class, and a few decided to sit with me. Tokiyami, the shadow monster guy, Midoriya, Uraraka, Ida, and Su were sitting beside and opposite me within a minute. It didn't take us long to discover just how nice Tenya Ida actually was. He was just really enthusiastic and official. Didn't help that he was from a hero family and he had a privileged upbringing. He seemed to be the type to always be the most responsible in a group. Tokiyami didn't seem to say much, but he was nice, and what he did say was either encouraging or unintentionally humorous. Uraraka seemed deeply invested in whatever Midoriya had to say, yet most of what he said were mutterings that he thought out loud. I had a tendency to do that, just more to myself. He was always carrying a notebook around in which he wrote things down. I was wondering what it was for until he suddenly spoke to me. "Alex, what did you say your quirk was again?" I suddenly turned my attention to him, as I hadn't expected anyone to say anything to me like that out of the blue. I started, trying to think of the best way to describe it without overloading them with nonsense. Basically, I can teleport to any place I've been to within 100 meters. There's a lot of precision involved, but it's an instantaneous teleportation. That's why I was virtually useless during the test. None of my tests really suited my quirk, so everyone had an advantage over me. Midoriya was quickly jotting things down in his journal as he speedily kept up with what I was saying. "How can you write so fast? Isn't Japanese really hard to write?" I asked him, as I leaned my head over as far as I could without coming into contact with Uraraka, to see how fast his wrists were moving. It looked like something out of an anime. Ida was the next to speak. Speaking of, you said you're from Ireland, right? What's it like there? I juggled a little to myself, finally having a topic I could discuss that I'd be really well informed about and interesting to others. They all seemed eager to listen, even Tokiyami was paying attention to me. Well, it's wet. There's a lot of rain. But because of all the rain, there's a lot of green. About half of Ireland is made up of countryside, small villages and lots of forestry. There's plenty of cities and bigger villages, but no matter where you look, there's always trees and hills. They all seemed engrossed in their own personal fantasies of what I was describing to them. It's cold most of the year, but we rarely get snow. The winters can be harsh, going below zero sometimes, and the summer heat waves rarely go above 30 degrees Celsius. Irish people themselves are mostly friendly, a lot like the people here actually. I guess that's the basic summary. There's loads to talk about, but I don't want to waste our entire lunchtime talking about myself and my country. I want to learn about you all too. They were all smiling as they listened to my tale and nodded when I finished. They each started telling bits and pieces about themselves to each other, and I got to know them all a little more. I wished for the moment to never end. It felt great having friends.